full frontal nudity makes you feel good.
That's a proud tradition, Kent.
It's a proud American tradition, actually.
Full frontal nudity.
Hello and welcome to the Quackcast. This is Quackcast number 320. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is no one. I'm all alone. No. I have a whole zoo of people. Mr. Baines. Hello, Mr. Baines.
Hello.
Hello. Ms. Pitts.
Hi.
Hi. And Tan Serene.
Hello. You have the same zoo of people that you always do. So
I didn't have this zoo last week. I had a different zoo. It was just me and Pitts.
that's because a couple had escaped. That's all.
Yes.
We are back.
The keepers shot you guys full of tranquilizer darts and dragged you back, and now you're
Exactly.
in the enclosures where you should be. We'll have to breed you with pandas or something. I don't know. What else do you do in a zoo? I'm not
Never
sure.
leave us again. It was terrible.
How was it
Oh
last
my
week?
god. Actually, it wasn't bad. It was pretty fun.
Yeah. We did a great Quackcast. You guys missed out. Totally.
Okay.
Chemistry.
It was incredible. So, listeners, all three of you, listen to last week's Quackcast and you'll find out how it was.
I saw the comments. It was like, this was the best Quackcast ever. Finally, a good Quackcast. I saw those comments.
Oz made them all.
I always do. So
Still.
this week we're going to be talking about this crazy idea of mine that as an author you create, you can make your readers believe anything, and you have to as an author because you write about things that you can't do yourself. You might have a super intelligent person, a super strong person, someone who is great with the ladies or great with the guys or whatever, and you write about this kind of stuff. And how do you convince a reader that this person is so smart or this person is such a great charmer if you can't do it yourself? And yet, authors always do. We've been doing this for centuries as authors. So how can you do that? How can you give someone a very convincing set of skills that you don't have and have no potential of ever getting, super amazing fighters and things like that. And your readers will eat it all up and they'll believe this person is such an amazing fighter completely. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. Whether it is a subject worthy of conversation, we shall see. We shall see. But before I get into that, the featured comic this week was something that I did. I didn't do it. I featured it. And I actually can't remember what it was. No, it was Slaughter at Camp, not a movie.
Yes.
Baines, did you read that one?
I haven't had much of a chance. I just looked at a couple pages so
There's
far, but
full
it's right up my
frontal
alley.
nudity,
I can't
so
wait.
yeah, beware. Full frontal
So like
nudity. All the good parts
Wow.
are on show. But it's
can't read
set
it
as
then, but-
mature, and that is within our guidelines on Drunk Duck that you can show nudity, but just not sex. Like full front, whatever. Basically, it is within the guidelines. All right.
It is art.
Just-
Okay, it is art.
Yes,
Okay.
it's art. It's like an 80s sex comedy sort of thing, so it would be fine for all ages. Well, not above teenager, okay? I'll explain it in my review that's happening now. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and the feature that I featured this week was called Slaughter at Camp, not a movie. You see the joke in the name? Not a movie. Okay. Sexy teens, a summer camp down by the lake, hormones, a mysterious legend of a roaming monster, and an ancient Indian burial ground. All the ingredients are here and ready for a deadly red soup of murder. And a good old-fashioned classic sex comedy. Ooh, My fave characters so far are Sandra Van Dyke, the douchey lesbian, and Patricia O'Brien, or O'Brien, the aggressive Irish girl. This comic is a lot of fun. The art is black and white. The style is sex, comedy, horror, thriller. I only have 2 criticisms of this comic. The text in the beginning is a little hard to read, and some of the character lines are a little clumsy, but, you know, everything else makes up for it. So apart from that, it is pretty good and is always improving. But be aware and beware. This comic is rated mature, and there are instances of full frontal nudity, which is, you know, fine to feature a comic under those guidelines. We're trying to feature M-rated comics, and M-rated comics can have things like nudity, but no full-on sex or anything like that. So, yes, it has that, as a good sex comedy should have. Titillating. So read Slaughter at Camp Not a Movie by Freakenberger, and it's rated M for mature audiences only. So, back to your show. And that was the feature. Slaughter at Camp Not a Movie. So, obviously you see the pun in the title. Slaughter is spelt wrong. No. Slaughter at Camp Not a Movie. So, yes, enjoy. We have the featured music as well. Featured music this week was for the comic Gloom, which I think... Quite a Guxo featured a couple of weeks ago. This music, I would describe it's creepy, it's ghostly, it's unsettling, uneven. This one gets under your skin and keeps you off balance. Take it away, Mr. Gumwallace. That was our music from Gumwallace. Thank you very much, Gumwallace. You got it in on time this week. You got your homework. I didn't have to do an extension for you. Good boy. So, this whole subject about convincing your readers about something that's, you can't do yourself. How do you make them believe that this character is super intelligent? And this goes not only for comics, it goes for book writing, actors in movies, of course, which you're all familiar with. Say the modern version of Sherlock Holmes by Bendy Dick Cabbage Patch. He's super intelligent and can think of a million miles a second and analyze everything. It doesn't matter, and everyone just believes that these traits are realistic. But of course, it's just totally silly. You write stories about characters who are like Tars. Your characters are military spies, people who are expert shots, stuff like that.
You imply that I cannot do all these things, though.
Well, you do have the same hairstyle as your sniper, so...
No, I mean, thank God, because if we had to be able to do everything our characters do, we would all have to be psychopaths for the village. So...
Yes, we would. Yeah, we have torturers and vicious murderers in our comics as well. Well, sometimes. Some of us do. Not me. But... yeah, we have to be able to convince the readers of these bizarre things that are so outside of ourselves. And whereas that might be a commonplace thing when you think about, it's just creative writing. But it's more than that when you have traits like, for example, intelligence, where it's not just a matter of saying, oh, this character lifted up a bus. Oh my God, they must be strong. With a character with intelligence specifically, you convince the reader by having them perform mental feats that the reader can actually sort of look at from different angles. They're not just being told this character is intelligent, but they're they're seeing these mysteries being solved without.
Well, you do that, and in my opinion, at least, you do that because you have the capacity to have the complete picture. You are the author.
Yes.
What is
true.
intelligence? Intelligence is assessed by speed of processing. Now I'm going a bit psychology of you. Okay, so it's speed of processing and the capacity to make the right connections. When you write a character that is intelligent, you know the correct answer. So you can easily stage it so that there are several different conclusions that can be drawn from a specific situation. But the intelligent character, Sherlock Holmes, is able to quickly reach the right conclusion. And that is intelligent to the reader because the reader also doesn't have the full picture. It is being revealed to him slowly, along with the characters.
Yes.
So
and then the real, it's like,
I'll go on, Baines.
And the clues are, I remember that first scene in the Benedict Cumberbatch version where he first meets Watson and he deduces that it was something like his watch was a gift from his drunk brother-in-law or something like that. And then he goes through, like, where the real genius is just what you're getting at there is, like, everything has been on camera, maybe not close enough for us to see, but he looks at the details of where his jacket is worn out, I don't even remember what all the details were, it's been a while, but there are all these minute details that actually add up to a logical conclusion, That's where it's really... So, sorry, Tans, if that's what you just said.
You're
repeated.
The author, yes.
You illustrated it very well.
The author starts out already knowing the answer to the solution and, just lays the bait down for the reader a bit at a time. And as a reader, you're working backwards. Well, as the author, you're...
And I think maybe the clues, making the clues... Like they're real enough that you can buy it.
Yeah. Like
you could believe that someone who has that level of observation could actually make that deduction.
They could actually exist. Yeah. But intelligence more than anything else is something that you have to write in a particular way in order to convince the reader. Because, like I said, with strength and all these other abilities, you just have to tell them and they'll believe it. Because that's the only way you can do it. You can't actually, show that. But, with intelligence, you have to make it convincing. You have to create that illusion by showing the feats that... that are the thing that make them intelligent. So, as we said with the example of Sherlock Holmes, but there are a lot of other examples of these characters, usually like serial killers and that kind of thing. They're meant to be extremely intelligent, and we do it in there's a lot of like popular faddish things that show it, like at the moment, what is it like? They're very particular. They're OCD, all this kind of bullshit, as if that's a sign of intelligence. It's basically stealing stuff from the Asperger's kind of.
That's not OCD.
Well, it's not, but it is. People with Asperger's often have OCD. They have those traits. So you steal stuff from the spectrum of autism, and you add that to your character because. Popularly now that is seen as a mark of intelligence, as if it is, but it's just a popular faddish thing. So that's one of the techniques to use. But yeah, in the old days, it was more like social cues that showed someone who was being very intelligent. They were awkward around other people, which was a sign of, they're more detached from other people. So they can't relate to other people very well because they're all in their own head.
Oh, the flaky professor that is super intelligent, or the genius that doesn't connect. I always felt that this was some sort of a cheap shot to intelligent people. Like, you are going to be a genius, but you are going to be like the UFO of the village. So,
yes,
as if, it cannot go hand in hand. You have to be crippled in some other manner in order to be super intelligent, which is, I think, that I have seen these patterns of these pairings, like also what they say for artists, that they all have dyslexia of some sort, or
messy writing,
ADHD, because here the reasoning. When they tested how an artist draws by measuring where the eye looks while the artist is drawing, the eye goes all over the page as the artist is drawing. It doesn't only stay on the path of the pencil, wherever it is at the moment.
Oh.
And they say, okay, that means that they cannot pay attention and focus, which is stupid, because anyone who has ever tried to draw, well or not so well, you have to take into consideration the entire picture in order to be able to draw the thing. So I've always had this sensation that something that is considered coveted as a talent or as an ability, they always tend in, especially in literature, but sometimes, as I said right now, in science, to try to pair it with some other negative element of some sort, which is, I think, a cheap shot in general.
Yeah, there's always some sort of trade-off in those sort of things. Just as you say, it's classic. It's from classical literature. I think there's always been that. Even going back to Greek times, a character cannot be perfect in every way, or cannot have this ultimate skill without having some handicap along with it. But yeah,
well, I mean, that's also about, a character who is perfect is not believable. It's not interesting.
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah. That's very true. Well, and that brings me to another thing. Okay, so my whole contention with this is, as an author, you're convincing the reader of this character's skill because you control the whole world and you can set it up, but you can make that so believable that this reader is convinced this person has a great skill. But say the ancient Greeks did the same with gods. You as a writer are basically creating the character in this story. Even the tales of the gods, like maybe Zeus or whatever, and you're convincing the reader that this character has supernatural abilities and can is omniscient or can do this and that, and it's only because you as the creator of this world, you control every facet, so you can make this character seem like they're a deity. They can seem like they're more than a human because you have that total control. And it's so convincing that not only does the reader not only is the reader convinced of this character's divinity, of this character's skill, within the narrative, they're convinced outside of the narrative. So when you're thinking of a character that is, invincible and godly, you'll refer back to this character. You'll think back, oh, Sherlock Holmes, that's an example of someone who's really intelligent. You don't think, the Sherlock Holmes mystery, that's an example of, some character solving crimes within that town of the Baskervilles or whatever. You think in isolation, this character is intelligent, or Zeus is, my God, he is otherworldly. He has all these powers. My goodness. Chuck Norris
I think that,
is super powerful.
Zeus has lightning associated with him and extramarital affairs. That's his superpower, being able to sire like a few thousand bastards or something like that.
Right.
He is a masterful. I mean, he is the best seducer of women in the whole world. So why don't golden showers work for me that way?
Oh my God. Well, I guess that if you were a god, like the king of gods and super rich, and you could fly and shoot lightning, you would have better chances.
Yeah.
So what about you guys? Have you ever had a challenge of trying to create some situation? I think actually, Baines, I was reading a page of Typical Strange, and
I don't recommend doing that.
well,
okay.
you had Oscar in. I think Penelope was having some sort of fantasy about what happened to Oscar, and Oscar turned into some louche kind of Lothario kind of character.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right.
In her fantasy, and she was convinced that he, in her fantasy, that he was this slick ladies' man kind of character, and it was like this complete transformation of Oscar's normal persona, just absolutely completely slicked hair and all that kind of thing. So how do you go out convincing your readership of this persona, of this, that he is a Lothario, that he has these, he's Mr. Slick. How do you do that?
That man, yeah, how do you do that?
Well, you did it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. Well, man, that's a good question. I don't know. I did like quite a few character designs on him, and I had an image in mind of. It was like something. I hope this might not be answering the question properly, maybe, but of sort of fashion. Like I saw that people, like guys who get a makeover to be more fashionable. I remember seeing this kind of special on that one time, and so that's kind of how that's the shirt I gave him, was like sort of the made up dude. And someone had once recommended to me that I improve my fashion with shirts like that and stuff like that. So that's kind of where the overall thing came from. And I disagreed. I don't like. I hated the way it looked. But so he, so that's kind of where I started. I mean, story wise, it was a daydream, but still, like she hadn't seen him for a while. What's he going to be like? So now the reader is wondering, what's he going to be like? Yeah. So then you're kind of paying attention, and just sort of top to bottom, or however much of the character you see, like just kind of fixing his hair, fixing his, he's lost some weight. He's got the shirt. He's got the, the bags under the eyes are gone, and in terms of what he said, that was to kind of make. To tell the specifics and also show like he was unlikable. In her mind, this version of him was arrogant and unlikable kind of thing.
Too slick. Yeah. Well, it's
right. Yeah.
It's a convincing transformation. So, what I was saying before is like with strength, and that you just tell people that someone's strong or show them lifting up something, but like intelligence, being someone who's good with the ladies or good with the guys, that's another thing that isn't a factor of telling someone something. You have to convince them by showing doing some, you have to do that by creating a presence for their character and creating a situation where it can be believable that a character is attractive.
And you play them against the baseline, whatever the baseline is in your comic. If it's realistic, and like a lot of people
Good point.
Whatever average intelligence is supposed to be in your world, you kind of indicate that, and then you have the contrast of this character's whatever abilities they have versus the norm,
Yes, very good point. Yeah, and that counts for everything. Yeah, sexual attractiveness, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and it can be very hard to do that if your baseline is skewed one way or the other. So. Yeah. I came across this when I was creating, say, Ace Kincaid, my kind of heroic-looking villainous sort of character. How do you make your character not only look heroic, but sort of be convincingly have a sort of convincing heroic presence? How do you do that? Or how, like, not only just heroic, but attractive, and how do you give them that kind of that feeling that radiates off those sort of characters in the classic films or heroic frontmen?
I think you have to draw him heroic in the first place, like the angles that you use, the way that he carries himself. They should all code for heroic alpha male.
Yeah, are you looking up at the camera, looking up a little bit? Or
like, always expecting to be shot at a low angle.
Right. Yeah.
That's
larger than life.
That's the simple aspect of showing them, but then how do you give them that presence that is more convincing, that's not only handsome and heroic, but also attractive, and to your readership, that they would find this person heroically attractive or interesting or dangerous. How do you give them those kind of characteristics? That's maybe something that you have to code in with the world, rather than just giving them, the old stylish hairstyle and the good looks.
Well, it also depends on the situations that you put them in. I mean,
Exactly.
You learn so much about a character according to how they react to situations.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's precisely what I'm getting at. Yes.
And it's how people react to them, right? So, like, that's where you have to get believability going.
I think that's something we overlook. I overlook that easily. Is a character isn't just in its own self-contained world when it does something. The way other characters react to it is going to have a big impact.
Especially if that character is extraordinary somehow. You have to make the normal people believable. So you kind of buy into everything,
Yeah, that's another great point. Yeah, because you can't just have, like, say, in a lot of the superhero stuff, where they fail, for me, is that the normal people are they're few and far between, and they're not very convincing, and the heroes are the only real ones. So the heroic people aren't really so heroic anymore, or super, because they've got no one else to play against. The world.
You're talking about the more recent one, like the big, where now all the characters are intermingled and there's no space for any other characters, kind of thing.
Yeah, X-Men's very much that kind of thing.
Right, even back to X-Men. Yeah, there's so many X-Men characters, like you can rarely see regular people, but they do show up in the better movies. You see more normal people, how they react.
Well, if you have everyone be a superhero, in a sense, you have regular people just in an environment. What?
I don't know what that was.
It's bit face sound effects.
No, she had her microphone muted.
Yes.
I don't think so. I think something got through.
You're a fucking liar, Baines.
Okay, on, Tance.
Anyway, I mean, you have like a society then, if you have like a full cast of people, all of them with superpowers, then the superpower condition is the norm. So basically you have regular people interacting. And the heroism has to come again, once again, from the regular interactions, the regular choices, and the personalities of the people.
Yeah.
That just happen to be superpowered as well.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. You change your baseline, as Baines was saying. That's precisely it. And
there are a lot of the movies have gotten there too, like superhero comics have been there forever, right? But now we're at a point where people, I think, buy into that more easily.
Yes, that's
I
why
think they did try to investigate that dissonance between regular people and superpowered people with Superman, where they had this existential thing about how they considered him basically like a god, and it was all about how regular people would approach the issue of having this single superpowered person that could basically annihilate them with a sneeze, if you will.
Right.
So
yeah.
So that was an interesting premise, at least.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up again. Again, we're getting slightly off because
off track.
We can show superness without actually creating any real convincing stuff for the reader. But you have to show it within context. That's the problem.
I think it again comes down really to personality. I mean, whatever the trappings of the character that you have in the end, if that character doesn't have a personality and there aren't stakes and situations where he or she will have to make choices, then you cannot really create any effect. From intelligence to heroism to pettiness to anything.
Like if the character wants something we relate to, kind of thing, we'll root for it, and we'll kind of, that helps a lot, right, with believing.
Yeah.
Whatever we're being asked to believe.
If they have a believable personality, even rather than just being a paper doll, they have to be a real person. There's some other things that are more something that you have to convince a reader of. Do some work to convince a reader of is like the culture of a character. You can't just say this character is cultured or sophisticated. You have to convince them, and that comes down to you as a reader, you as a writer. Again, you can't be, you can be super cultured, but it's unlikely that you're as super duper cultured and posh as you might want a character to be. You know, like, oh my god, they went to Eton and then Oxford, and they know Latin and Greek and French. Well, Chance is literally this sort of character, but
Chance is one of those people.
If we're not,
he's the only one.
I don't know Latin. I cannot speak Latin. So.
You'd find it a lot less trouble doing it than us, though. But yeah, you. Okay.
I think that when you want to build the character like that, and that goes beyond your own skill set, you do need to do some research, because the character will need to be able to display that sort of capacity.
And you don't need to research everything. You'll just research, say,
no.
I'm going to read a little bit of Ovid, and so I can have these quotes from this character and make them seem super intelligent. But you don't need to read all of it. Like, presumably this character has read all of Ovid and all of...
But you have to be very strategic, because it's very easy to have the impression, to get the impression across that the character has only read a little bit and is just flashing that knowledge.
like the writer
instead of actually knowing it.
Yes, or just knowing the title, like me.
Exactly. You would have to get into the shoes of a person like that, and for that I recommend the quote-unquote people watching, in the sense that if you want the character to be cultured in a certain way, watch some podcasts or video. Watch podcasts, okay. Listen to some podcasts and watch some videos of people that theoretically, at least to your idea, encapsulate. what you're trying to depict. See how they talk, how they express themselves, and see like a variety of people and pick the one that fits your character more. If you really don't have like any kind of connection to whatever it is that you feel your character has to have.
Actually, I was watching this.
Like for example,
I'll go on.
If I wanted to display a thrasher, but I don't actually have any real connection, and I haven't met people that are very hardcore thrashers. Okay,
yeah, you've never met anyone like that at all.
No, not a single person.
Nobody on this call.
You only know
Nobody
poses.
on this set, and I would be very surprised if I came to realize that I had any friends like that. But what I meant is like the really deep underculture of, for example, okay, thrasher, because I know Tidre came to my mind, but something else, I don't know, death metal people.
Oh. Yeah.
Or what's the other guy? The Wiccans, for example. If I had to display a Wiccan character, I would need to watch some Wiccan people that are actually Wiccan in real life and see how they act and how they don't act, in a sense. And then, pray and hope that I depict that properly. And then maybe have some Wiccan people read it and tell me if it sounds familiar or not.
Speaking of posh characters, there was this thing I was watching a while ago. It was called Black Butler. This is I'm echoing here. Where am I coming from? I don't know. Black Butler. Anyway, this is an anime with a bunch of characters that they're meant to be British upper class, but it's written by Japanese, of course, as all anime is, and acted by American voice actors, as all dubbed anime seems to be. And I was watching that thinking, how are they going to depict like super upper class posh people, posh English people, when these Americans doing the voice acting and Japanese doing the characters? Because often when you see Japanese versions of British characters or Americans, they're very caricatured. It's very silly. They get so many things wrong, and it's very clunky and just dumb. But I was surprised in that they got it they did quite a good job. And the American voice actors did an excellent job. They weren't completely spot on with their posh accents, but they did quite a good job convincing you that these characters were actually really posh and British, and it could almost be not completely convincing, but almost be completely convincing that these characters were very upper class and posh, especially the Lord Phantom Hive, I think the character's called. Lord Phantom Hive, who's meant to be a very posh sort of character. But as I say before, it's more about convincing the audience of the poshness without actually being that posh. And they did quite a good job. But, not in just showing like the accents of the character and the dress, but also the mannerisms and all that kind of thing. What constitutes posh behaviour, disdain for the lower classes, and you treat the servants a certain way, and all this kind of thing. It was very well done, very well researched. Anyway, I just wanted to give an example of something that has been done that way by people who obviously had to do a lot of research in order to achieve that. Because that didn't come naturally.
They'd have to go on a service.
I think any of us would have a great deal of trouble trying to do that as well, just as much as the Japanese people. Oh, I've sort of talked myself into...
There's this movie, a movie called Sleepwalkers, the Stephen King story made into a movie I saw years ago.
Yeah.
And I'd happened to take one class at school where I learned who, I knew some writers. I knew who Thoreau was, Henry David Thoreau, and stuff like. I knew just a little smattering. So anyway, I'm watching this movie, and they try to indicate that this new high school student, this girl meets this guy, and he's, supposed to come across as very smart for his age and very educated. And so she's like, sees a book he's carrying. It's like, oh, what are you reading? And he's like, oh, I'm reading, I'm reading Emerson. She's like, oh, you're reading Emerson? She's like, you read that? He's like, oh yeah, Emerson, Therier, all the transcendentalists. He says, like completely pronouncing the name wrong, and that made me laugh.
Direct,
just to show the other side of the
Yes. Oh, that's
and continuing from that, I mean, there are some things that an author can get away with if the audience that is also not aware of the actual facts.
Sure.
And for example, at least up until fairly recently, the depiction of psychiatrists was very much harrowed by that sort of thing, like having a preconception of how psychiatrists would be, with electrodes and stuff. Or a psychologist would always be Freudian, the couch and the...
Tell me about your mother.
Absolute silence. Oh. Yes, that's right. And then, and tell me about your childhood and starting off with that when, and being very judgmental and watching you like this.
Yeah.
You do it perfectly, Tans. Perfect.
Yeah. Which actually is a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing because I think that it stereotypes these professions so much that actually it is deterring people from actually seeking in real life support in those professions. And so you can actually, when people aren't very much familiar with the subject, you can get away with a ton of things.
Yes, that's true.
Just playing off stereotypes, and people will be fine with it. Until then, the person that does know something comes along and destroys, and is being a bastard to you and stuff like that.
Changes the paradigm, by properly depicting the characters. Another thing is toughness in a character. How but not just toughness, but say Bones, that kind of character. You show a gruffness, toughness, grit, a very individualistic, powerful character. To kind of a good example of it is say the whole Chuck Norris myth. We've got a whole lot of those bullshit memes about Chuck Norris. What's so powerful. Chuck Norris's fist and all this kind of stuff, which has been built totally upon the ridiculous characters that he played, in his movies. He was I think an eponymous sort of character in his movies were based on a version of himself more than anything. He didn't even play a character. It was meant to be himself, but people have associated that extremely tough kind of character with the actual man. It's been that convincing, even though the man is like a dull guy who dresses in boring clothes, has bad hair, and has an effeminate voice. That is Chuck Norris.
Does he have an effeminate voice?
He does, very much so.
Okay.
Listen to the way he talks. Jesus. He's no Vin Diesel. He's
total Jim workout. Okay, I'll look up something.
But his movies the writers have done such a great job of convincing us, and the meme writers especially, of the toughness and the powerful and the grit in this character. But as a writer, as a comic creator, as we all are, it's not that easy to create that kind of thing, to create a character that's meant to be seen as being tough and powerful and gritty and self-reliant, that kind of person, is it? I mean, have you ever tried to
true.
do that?
Create a meme.
No. Create a character who is like meant to be seen as being powerful, being self-reliant, being tough. That the character who has 1,000-yard stare. The tough, reliant man. That kind of character. That is another one that you have to convince the audience of within the context of your story, because it's not something you can just tell people, okay, this guy is tough and reliant and all this, and then you see the way he acts and you think, oh no, he's not at all. You're doing a very bad job of convincing me that this character is at all tough or reliant or anything.
I have a guy who's like a James Bond type of character, sort of a James Bond / I don't know, Jack Ryan, and he's supposed to be tough as nails. He's a government operative. He's a field agent. Plus, he's in charge of stuff and works with a shadowy kind of organization that's ill-defined. And he physically is very capable. He's got guns. He's can physically fight, but he's like 3 feet tall.
Yes, I know that character. Yes.
So I worked on that story a lot, but mostly in terms of just the way the plot is. It's got kind of a weird plot in that story, but I also thought people are not going to buy this. The couple, you only see a little bit of him physical action, but he's very effective.
Yeah.
And I thought people are not going to buy this. And, maybe they didn't, but nobody said anything. Maybe the people took it as parody or as comedy or whatever.
That was convincing.
Maybe they bought it.
Maybe. Nobody said otherwise. So,
from my reading of the character, he looked like a tough as nails, 50-year-old sort of, just tough guy kind of character. And it didn't matter how tall he was. He looked like someone who's had a great deal of experience in the world, and it just came across perfectly. Just from the way he looked.
I guess it was only the physical stuff that I thought people might go, that would, that someone that height just physically could not do. Even nobody could do some of the stuff he did, maybe technically, but
you're convinced by his background for a start, so you fill in the blanks yourself. So he's got he does all these things.
Good.
He's a Secret Service agent. So when he does physical stuff, your mind sort of just fills in the blanks itself. Oh, he must do this because he has this great martial arts or whatever. But that
was the physical stuff was a conscious choice to say he is exceptional for someone his size.
Yeah.
In what he can do, he's a genetic abnormality, or he doesn't have. I don't know what it was, but I was hoping people would fill in the blanks or just say, okay, I'll buy that.
Yeah, that's a very good example of.
It's good to know.
Yeah, you've constructed a character to be in the James Bond mold, which is something you have to convince the people of. You can't just tell them, he has Secret Service background, so they'll believe it. You have to actually show that. And not only just show him doing stuff physically, he has to be sort of... his personality has to be convincing in that role as well. And it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome, man.
So but that's not an easy thing as a writer, is it? Because, again, it's a contextual thing. It's not just a character like that by themselves.
Yeah, if you go too far, people will they'll kind of tune out. Or, what his other physical feat is right at the end of the story, and at that point I sort of thought it was like Jaws, the shark exploding, which technically would never happen, but in the book, that's not how Jaws dies. He kind of slowly sinks to the ground, but Steven Spielberg knew that nobody would care, and that would be way more satisfying at the end of the movie, and people would kind of at that point would buy into anything, They wanted that emotional thing.
Yeah.
So, there was a bit of that at one point.
Well, on that subject, so if you've ever seen Archer, you guys...
Yeah.
A little bit. I tried. I should try it again.
So initially in the first few series of that thing, before they sort of go a bit further, they set Archer up as being an amazing secret agent, incredible with the ladies. He can bed anyone, literally. anyone that he wants.
Mhm.
He's incredibly handsome, very physically fit, and a great driver, just great at everything that he tries at. And they do a bit of like convincing the audience of, you know, his abilities, and you can sort of start to, well, obviously he's beating the women and he's shooting the people, so you have to believe that. But do you really believe that this person could do it? That's sort of in question. Because it's a comedy, you have to belie what the character is doing. You know, even though he's betting these women and stuff like that, he's still a bit of a Jerry Lewis in the physical comedy, you know, and the ridiculous situations he gets himself into, which sort of undermines that idea that he's an amazing James Bond sort of character. That's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because
and a psychological wreck. I mean, he's just like a mess, you know. Obviously, and his drinking too, especially as the series goes on, it's kind of superhuman levels of alcohol tolerance.
Yes, and he's incredibly rude to people and incredibly violent to people in a lot of ways, and that again that belies his charm and all those positive things. You know, why would people like him if he's like that? You know, why would he have any friends at all?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Why would he be able to convince anyone of anything once he's betrayed them so many times? So that's that kind of undermines this whole thing of, you know, you create the world by convincing your audience of this thing, but because it's a comedy, you have to undermine that, which is an interesting facet of the whole thing.
That is interesting.
I think that the audience also is keyed to that, because they know it's a comedy. It's not something that takes itself as a realistic representation of agents or of people's relationships and stuff. It's basically depicting and satirizing tropes and situations. So people are much more forgiving, I think, because that's not the point. The point isn't to be super realistic and consistent and, you know, things like that.
Yeah, yes, that's a fact. Yeah, you do forgive a lot because it is a comedy. So you do have to have some level of convincing people because you're setting up the world for these things to happen. So you have to make it sort of logically consistent in order to be able to break it and make fun of it. So there is that frisson between those two things. Baines, what were you going to say, though?
I was just going to ask if Pitt had thoughts on because Bones is that guy, right? I mean, he's rough and tough and all that kind of stuff, but you believe it, you know.
Yeah.
You don't. It doesn't feel like when you read about Bones, you're like you kind of are on his side, and you do kind of worry about him, and you believe that he could die and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's sweet. I'll let him know you care about him.
Yeah, just in case you wanted to say about.
When I write him, I'm writing essentially somebody. I want him to be tough and everything, and it's my idea of what tough is, but I also like him. So me liking him, I guess, just goes into the character, and I want to write somebody who's kind of, who's funny and who's might be interesting to watch. He's kind of gross, but he's, I don't know. I try to really sit there sometimes and think about why people do like him. And I guess he's charismatic in his own way, though I wouldn't necessarily call it that. I don't know. But I guess just the only way I can suggest that why he turns out the way he does is because I have a very specific personality in my mind when I write him. And that's who comes out. I mean, I know that's so vague, but it's like, I don't know how else to put it, really, because I don't go out of my way to like make something how do I make him tough? That never really came to my mind. It just kind of came with the territory. So
You are a tough character anyway. So it's...
Because in my opinion, one thing that shows that is that he always bounces from everything. Like he might be ground to a pulp or be split into pieces or
it's cut in half.
Fail in a series of situations, but he will never give up, and he will always bounce back and go for the prize, whatever he thinks the prize is. And I think that shows toughness.
Yeah.
At least
for me.
Yeah.
But what about the charisma? So you mentioned that just in passing there, but Bones is someone who is charismatic enough to lead all of Septica and to become the king of Septica.
Well, we'll see. He thinks he is. We'll see.
But in the
he was for a little bit there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was for a little bit there. But we didn't see him in that role for very long. And sometimes I wonder how it would have gone if, he hadn't gotten the axe as he did and whatnot. So, so those part of his character aren't really explored yet. But
well, he is also a natural leader in that he took over from Igor, as the leader of that small group. He was just way more charismatic than anyone else. He is a leader that people follow. Mm-hmm. So that is something, and it's a believable too. You don't, as a reader, you don't read it and think, oh, he's just the leader because Pitt wants him to be the leader. You think naturally he should be the leader. What's that, Tans?
What was that? I said he butts in and takes the leadership.
He does. But it's natural. You think he should. He's like the front man in a band. He should be the leader. Yeah. He should.
Is part of that maybe because he's the main
character.
Yeah, so we've known him a lot more than we've known these other slobs that he's leading, And I'm actually really glad you bring that up because sometimes I do wonder, how much is he really the leader? Is he the leader because it's the most convenient right now, maybe? Or I don't know, there's all these little... But anyway, character-wise, I'm getting off... character-wise, I don't know. I really don't know what else to say. It just kind of all plops out of my head without forethought, as terrible as that sounds.
Yep.
There's no shame in being a natural. If you can do that without thinking, that's fantastic. But it is believable that, not just because he is the main character. It's it fits, like you can write a tale where a character sort of butts in and makes himself a leader and they just don't fit because they're not doing anything that a leader would do. They're not behaving like a leader or like me when I try and write. And it doesn't work, but it does with Bones. So that has successfully convinced your readership you've created a situation where it works, which is like the topic of this Quackcast, which is making the reader believe. My weird idea. I thought this had to be explored. This concept. It's interesting to me anyway because
it's interesting. Yeah.
As a writer, these are situations that you have to. Well, not in Pitface's case, but you have to work in order to create these situations and make them believable, or else, it doesn't happen.
Can I say something about that? Yeah, you do have to work on this about all this. But if you know your characters well and you let them act and react to the situations, they will do what they need to do by themselves. And the one that his personality or her personality is a leadership one will become the leader and will gravitate just by interacting and just by being who the character is, if you let them interact and don't have like a preconception in your mind and force situations into happening, the characters will gravitate to be where they should be.
Yes. Yes.
Like, and if you have two living personalities, you will have these people clash. Okay, sorry.
No.
That sort of thing. Then you will create, your conflicts and the suspense between characters and
which that goes back to what Baines and you were saying earlier in the Quackcast about starting off by giving the characters a believable personality. So if you can do that, then they will interact in a way that is believable. So that's a good first building block. Give them a personality that works, not just a title. Don't give them a title, give them a personality. Don't give them a set of tropes or traits. Actually give them a working kind of way of being. I can't think of another synonym for personality. All right, well, thank you guys for being part of this Quackcast, number 320. Making the reader believe.
believe.
You will believe a man can fly.
You will. All right, this has been Quackcast number 320. I've been Ozone Ocean, and you guys have been fantastic.
Grazie.
Full frontal nudity.